to the TD Show.
Touchdown Titans! There are no flags on the field! It's a miracle! Tennessee has pulled a miracle!
Broadcast live on thetdshow.com.
There goes Davis! Oh my God! Davis is going to run it all the way back! Auburn's going to win the football game! Auburn's going to win the football game!
2 hours of the best sports talk on the planet, or at least out of Edmonton, Kentucky.
Oh God! Stokely down the sideline! Can he catch him? Stokely! Wow! Touchdown! Denver! Unbelievable!
Coming to you live, your hosts, TJ and Dan.
Here comes the rain!
Welcome back to the TD Show. Today on the program, Bailey gets paid, the 3-car drives again, the fans storm the court, and the Hornets and Lady Hornets prepare for district. I have a guarantee regarding the 500 this weekend, and Daniel will provide you with what to watch, and you can't forget 2 minutes with Paula Dan coming up in the second hour of the show.
Don't forget, you can still reach us on Facebook at facebook.com/TheTDShow. Our Twitter handle is @TheTDShow, and you can email the show at mail@thetdshow.com. You can listen or watch us live at thetdshow.com on the live feed page. You can still listen to us at Spreaker.com/user/TDShow or on the Spreaker app. If you're not able to watch or listen to us in our entirety today, you can listen to or watch our podcast at the tdshow.com podcast page. Remember, we'll be looking for your comments and questions on our live feed page, Facebook, and Twitter, but we really want you to give us a call. So if you get a chance and you can, give us a call this morning. The number's 502-509-3190. That's 502-509-3190. And share your thoughts with us. Don't forget, you can vote on our poll. It's on our Facebook, on our website there at thetdshow.com on the first page, which is located, to the right of where all the main stuff is there. And here's the poll question this morning. Do you believe NASCAR should retire the 3-car?
Kind of a loaded question. We'll get to a little bit later when we get to talking about the
got a lot to talk about in the Daytona 500 this weekend and today. Biggest race of the year for NASCAR. Kind of kicks things off. Even people that don't follow NASCAR regularly usually watch the Daytona 500. It's easily their most popular event in the year and draws the biggest ratings for them every year.
And we'll talk about the Daytona 500. We'll talk about UNC rushing the floor after defeating Duke at home. We're going to talk about little MLB, Braves signing Simmons, Reds signing Bailey. We'll start off there. But if you have any comments or questions regarding anything that we've said we're going to talk about or something that we have no idea about, you bring it to our attention. Give us a call, 502-509-3190, or comment on the Facebook, Twitter, like Dan said. We want to get your comments, questions.
And that number is listed right underneath the live feed there. If you're watching our video on our website, that phone number is listed right underneath there on the comments on the live feed. So you can find it pretty easy, and we'd like to talk to you. It doesn't matter what you want to talk about. We'd like to hear from you this morning.
Right, and if you're too shy to get on the air with us, you can leave us a comment right in under the live feed where you're listening to us or watching us.
You don't even have to put your name. You can make up a name. So, yeah, we'd like to hear from you. We'd like to see what y'all think is important going on this week in the world of sports. I know what's most important to TJ, and what we'll start off with this morning is the Reds' big move they made this week. Not really a move, but their big contract decision and signing Homer Bailey to a big deal. He's getting paid, like the ace that he's starting to become.
Yeah, that's right. And, before today, or before yesterday, I guess it was, or last week, the general consensus was that he wasn't going to be a Red after this year. And if the Reds somehow fell out of the race during the season, that he would get dealt before the trade deadline. I mean, it was pretty popular belief that he was going to be a New York Yankee next year. It definitely not a Red. End up somewhere.
For everything I heard, that Homer Bailey had kind of wore out his welcome in Cincy, and he wasn't going to be there. I didn't know that they were going to be able to come up with this kind of money to pay him to stay around. If you think about it, over 6 years, the money he got's really not stupid. It's just seeing that big number at the end, I think, kind of throws people a little bit.
Yeah, it's something that I've spoken about every week here for a couple weeks. Is the fact that I think we're going to see more and more, not average players or great players, but above average players that are going to get this kind of money. The 4 to 7 years, 80 to 120, 130 million.
Yeah.
You don't have to be Joey Votto or Mike Trout or somewhere along that lines to get $100 million.
Yeah, and what we're starting to see is, even though baseball hasn't reclaimed its position as the premier sport in America, football still is easily holding that. What baseball has are fans that are incredibly dedicated and fans that are going to pay higher and higher amounts of money to watch their team, whether that be on TV through one of these packages or like a MLB at the plate or on an online package like MLB TV or through higher ticket price at the ballpark. Those dedicated fans are willing to pay that amount, and so I think as the years go on, with the amount of games that players play and the toll it takes on the body, we're just going to continue to see these contracts rise.
So with all that being said, let me go here. I got a text as soon as it came out officially that the deal was signed that wow, Homer Bailey, $100 million. And then, I had some friends over last night, and one of them, Homer Bailey, $100 million? So apparently there's this belief that Homer Bailey isn't above or isn't worth $105 million over 6 years. And here's what I would say to you. In any scenario, I believe it is much better to pay a player that has a proven track record that he is improving every year instead of paying an Albert Pujols who has clearly peaked
based on what he's already done.
Right. You want to pay a player for the future,
exactly,
not the past.
I couldn't agree with that statement more.
And let me share Homer Bailey's track record here. Since 2009, he has improved every year. He's went from 8 wins to 9 wins to 13 wins. His ERA has improved every year. It's went from 4.5 to below 4.5 to sub 4, and is at 3.49, 3.5 now.
Yeah, his first year he was in the 5s, and then he's in the 7s. I mean, he's getting better every year. His
WHIP, 1.4 in 09, 1.3, 1.2, a lower 1.2. Last year, 1.1. Your goal as a pitcher is to be at about 1.
At 1.
And he's getting pretty close.
I agree.
Look at strikeouts. 86, 100, 106, 168, 199. Every year in every statistic, Homer Bailey has improved.
Yeah, and this is something I really didn't. I never looked up the numbers. I'd always thought of him as a control pitcher, maybe a finesse pitcher. I didn't realize that he had gotten that many strikeouts last year. I was stuck on the 86 strikeout years. I didn't realize that he had been getting that many strikeouts later. And if you look, that category alone, I think, says the most for me. When he came up, started pitching on a regular basis, he had 86 strikeouts in a whole season. That was in 20 starts, 86 strikeouts. Last year he had 32 starts, 199 strikeouts. That's over 6 a game. I mean, that's
right.
A pretty good. That's the stat that jumps off the page.
And he's becoming a workhorse in the middle of the pitching rotation too. If you look at the past 2 years, he's threw over 200 innings. And injuries, which were a problem very early in his career, haven't shown up in the past 4. I can remember taking a trip to Cincinnati with Coach McMurtry watching Homer Bailey pitch, and I believe he gave up about 5 runs in 2 innings. And the whole way home, Mac was like, well, we're probably going to beat Homer Bailey to Louisville, but he will be there before too long. And I'm going to tell you now, Homer Bailey has came a long way from that day.
Yeah, and that was the thing with Homer Bailey. You see a lot of pitchers that come in that are power pitchers that come in and have their best years their first 3 years. They're throwing it 100 miles an hour, 98 miles an hour. But then you see a lot of pitchers who are like that pitched the way Homer Bailey pitches and pitched the way that Greg Maddux pitched, I think if you look at them, you can see some similarities, not maybe in their delivery, but in the way they pick apart the game and the way they look at it. They know they're not going to blow it past anybody, so they're pitching around and out of zones, and I do see the improvement, and I agree until you started talking to me about it, which was before today. I didn't know about this deal. I had another buddy of mine that's a huge Reds fan that came in and told me the moment it happened, came down into my office and told me about it, and we were talking about it, and he was telling me how he was getting better, but until I looked at these stats, I still thought that was a little high. But I am of the opinion when it comes to Major League Baseball and the era of Major League Baseball that we're in, which is the post-steroid era, that if you're going to pay a player the big money to stick around, it needs to be a pitcher, and preferably a starting pitcher, because, back in the day, it didn't matter how well your pitchers were, because you were going to score 11 or 12 runs, because, you're going to have 4 or 5 home runs a game from people. Those days are over. Defense is what's going to win ball games. Pitching is what's going to win ball games. And if you're going to pay a player big money, it ought to be a starting pitcher. So I agree with it. I didn't know they were going to be able to come up with that kind of money to keep him after the big deals they gave Votto and some of the problems they've had with whether or not Brandon Phillips is going to be there. I didn't know what kind of money was going to be tied up in that situation, but I'm glad they got to keep him. And if he continues on the path that he's on, he's going to be 33 when this deal is over. So if we could, in the next 3 years, it's reasonable to assume he will continue to improve at least until he's 30. So he could be a low 3 ERA guy and a 1 WHIP guy for the next 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, the thing with Bailey is when he got drafted in 2007, there was a lot of thought there that he was going to be great. He was going to be a Cy Young type pitcher. And after struggling in 07 to 09, people kind of just wrote him off. And, let's get rid of him. Obviously, he's not going to be what we thought he was going to be. Well, not every pitcher is going to be a Cy Young pitcher in their rookie year. Not everybody's going to be a Strasburg. I mean, it takes some pitchers time to develop, and I believe that's what he's doing. He's gotten in the league. He's getting his innings. But all that said, the one negative of this deal is that it hurts the Reds' chances of keeping Matt Latos long term. I believe he's tied up through this year and next year, and you kind of wanted to have him and Cueto 1-2 for years to come. But it looks like with this deal, unless you come up with a lot more money, you're not going to be able to tie up Cueto, Bailey, and Latos.
Do you think they're going to get rid of Latos, or do you think they'll keep Latos, get rid of Cueto, and move Bailey maybe into 1 with Cueto at the 2 if he continues to improve?
Here's the wild card to the whole situation, and that's the Cueto back problems.
Yeah,
he changed his delivery last year to almost a Hideo Nomo back to the pitcher, which, I mean, when he pitched, it's been unbelievable for him. He's been a Cy Young pitcher when he pitches. He's been one of the best in the league. It's just he hasn't had enough innings from his injuries. So assuming he stays healthy, I think Bailey maturing like he is in Cueto would be a good 1-2 long term. But if you see injuries with Cueto, maybe you think, well, as good as he is, maybe we should keep Latos.
Yeah, see, that's kind of the road that I've been traveling down a little bit as far as my thought process is getting Cueto healthy, and when you do get him healthy, trying to deal him, and then having a 1-2 combination with Bailey and Latos. And I wouldn't even be opposed to putting Bailey ahead of Latos if he continues.
Right. But going from the Homer Bailey signing to a team that's more dear to your heart, the Atlanta Braves, they signed Simmons this past week.
Yeah, Simmons was the most recent in a long line of signings of young players for the Braves. After we let go of Brian McCann, kind of lost the face of the franchise. I wasn't sure what was going to happen. We weren't really making any moves. We weren't really picking up any free agents. I've heard this all offseason long from Strin and from Gonzalez, who both actually got new deals themselves. The GM and the manager, they both got new deals this year. They're going to be there for, I think, 6 more years. But we've heard this all year, and it says we're committed to keeping our young talent. That's what they would say when people ask him why they didn't go after a player or why they weren't looking for players. And I thought that they were only talking about the young pitching prospects we've got coming up through AAA who are going to be outstanding in about 2 years. We're going to have a really, really great rotation. But they've spent $225 million over the past week for 20 years of service. Essentially, though, they're spending about $350 million for about 26 years of service because next year they're going to have to look at Jason Hayward's deal again. And I know there's a little talk that they might let Hayward go, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think they're going to lock him up, and he's probably going to be worth about $150 million to him, just based on what they locked up Freeman for. But this week, the big news was Andrelton Simmons, $58 million for 7 years in his third year in the league, 24-year-old kid. And you think, man, that's a lot of money in a lot of years. But they bought out all of his arbitration and 2 years past his arbitration. His offensive stats didn't astound you. He batted .248 last year. That was his first full season. He'd been up and down for 2 years. Last year was his first full season. He's regarded as the best defensive shortstop in the game, and he is a really good defensive shortstop. I remember watching the post-game show after a Braves game, and they asked Freddie Gonzalez what his favorite play or most memorable play that he'd ever made, and he said the next one because, it's every night he was making big plays. So I don't think that money's crazy because you're getting him from 24 to 31 years old. Yeah. You're getting him
the
in
prime
his
of
prime.
A shortstop's career.
Yeah. Now, when those 7 years are up, you're not going to be able to afford him. He's going to be gone. The same with a lot of these people. Maybe save Freeman because they're going to keep him around, I think, at any cost. Another big deal they made was the Freddie Freeman deal that we've already talked about. 8 years, $135 million. He's been a stud, an offensive workhorse, 319. He's batting .319, I'm sorry, with 24 home runs, 119 RBIs last year. He's 24 years old and got the biggest deal in Braves history. Of course, this is in a new era, and the Braves are going to move to a new ballpark after this coming season. Next year, they're going to be in a new ballpark. So they're anticipating to have a lot more revenue from that. Of course, they're always going to have TV money with Turner down there and the deals that he's struck and the things going on. They're always going to have big TV contracts coming in. So they can afford to do that with Freddie Freeman, and I think he's going to become, the Chipper Jones, the face of the franchise type player, just because he's a likable guy. He's outgoing, doesn't have any kind of record of being offensive to anyone. He's never broke any laws.
Can't drive real well in the snow.
No, though. He cannot drive so well in the snow, but he is big buddies with Chipper Jones, and I think having Chipper's blessing goes a long way in Atlanta.
Oh yeah.
Next big deal that they signed in this past week was Julio Teheran, 6 years, $32.4 million. He's 23 years old. This was his second year as a full-time starter. He's becoming an ace for the Braves, and he's looking pretty good. He was 14-8 this year with a 3.2 ERA. He had 30 starts. $32 million is not bad at all for 6 of the best years of a kid's life. Now, what you have to think about when you're locking these people up is, they could fall off the radar, or they could get hurt. But the kind of money, the value that you're getting based on what they're going to be worth in 6 years when this contract is up, I think outweighs the risk.
Right. Their arm could fall off, or they could pitch well to where they would be earning $20 million a year if you hadn't signed them.
Exactly. Another pitcher they signed up was Kimbrel for 4 years, $42 million. He's their closer. Probably going to be regarded as one of the best closers in the game.
One of the top two closers.
One or two best closers in the game this year. I think he's definitely going to win the saves battle, which is something we're going to talk about in a little bit. This is what Kimbrel had to say when they gave him his deal, which I think says a lot about the strategy that the Braves are trying to employ and the camaraderie there kind of is between these guys. They all like each other and they want to stay together. It's almost a Miami Heat situation where they would take a little less money. They know that if they went to arbitration, they could get more money in 2 years, but they've all taken these deals. Anyway, he says
the Braves are a lot more likable than the Miami Heat.
Yeah. He says, I can see what we're doing as an organization and a ball club. Kimbrel said at the time his signing was announced, we're going for a win. As of right now, we're planning on winning for a long time. This is where I want to be. I want to be closing out division titles and league championships and World Series games, and we've got the team to do it now. He's had 139 saves and 154 opportunities and a 1.29 career ERA, and he's only 25 years old. So when his deal's up, this $42 million deal, he's only going to be 29, and that's a player that they might actually want to re-sign at that point for the big money and keep around. like I said, the outstanding question mark for the Atlanta Braves is Jason Hayward. Are they going to re-sign him or are they not going to re-sign him? His deal is for 2 more years. They would revisit it after this coming season. The past 2 years, he's been limited. He only played 104 games last year, and he only played 128 games the year before that. He's batting .259 with 73 home runs over his career. But like I said, he's been injured, had some thumb injuries, got hit in the face.
You know who Jason Hayward kind of reminds me of?
Ken Griffey Jr.?
Homer Bailey.
Okay.
Came into the league, supposed to be a superstar, and has struggled a little bit
early,
assuming what everybody thought he would do.
Right. I mean, if you look at his numbers for a second and third year player, they're good.
Right.
He was so highly regarded coming in.
And the talk of him's kind of fell off since then, but I believe he's still a player like Homer Bailey that's going to mature into a great player.
Yeah, I think that in 5 years we're going to see him as a bona fide superstar.
Correct.
And he's going to be commanding, like I said, that $150 million deal. TJ's got something he likes to say about the Reds and about their pitching situation.
Right. First, let me speak to the Braves situation for just a second, if I can. The same person that texted me about the Reds signing Homer Bailey for $100 million that couldn't believe that he'd be worth that much money also said that not every player that the Braves sign will work out. And my thoughts on this are, well, do all signings ever work out, and do they need every signing to work out? Because if you look at that team, they are loaded from top to bottom, and the pitching staff is good and young.
And getting better.
You got Tehran, Wood, Medlin, and you got
Beachy
Kimbrel in the
coming
bullpen.
back off the injury.
Right. Beachy is a number 4. He's not a number 1, but for a number 4, he's pretty good.
Yeah, and you've got Venters coming back this year in your relief. I mean, it's going to be outstanding.
Right. Every deal doesn't have to work for them to be successful.
Yeah, all you want to avoid is the big stupid deals, like the Albert Pujols deals.
Right.
That's what you want to avoid as a GM, is getting a guy who obviously doesn't have that many years left in him. You think you're going to get 3 out of those 7 that are good, and you don't even get 1. That's what you want to try to avoid with a young player. Even if they get injured, even if they have a bad game, they've got enough vitality left in them that they can make up some of that, and you're going to get most of your money's worth, even if they completely blow up.
Right. I don't see how the Braves aren't good for the next 5 years to come.
Which is exactly what the point I'm gonna make here is, you're not going to see the Yankees or the Dodgers making any of these kind of moves. They're not going to be locking up young players for big deals. They're going to attract the big names. None of these kids have really big names outside of the Braves, aside from Hayward, who we know about, and maybe Freeman doesn't even have that big of a name outside of the Atlanta Braves.
Right.
And Kimbrel, who we talked about. But aside from that, most of their key players are not huge name guys, but they're locking those players up, and this is their experiment that I think could result in multiple World Series championships.
Right. I spoke last week and a couple weeks ago about the Yankees being a decade ahead of everybody as far as money. I think they're a decade behind on ideology because they're signing prime players as opposed to players who are reaching for their prime.
The game is changing. This worked 15 years ago because, we had PEDs. Players were playing past their prime at an incredibly high level because they could recover. The game is cleaned up. The game has changed. You have to gamble on these young players. You can't just lock up people who've already made a name for themselves. And the Yankees will figure it out, I think. And the Dodgers will figure it out.
Right, but that being said, specifically talking about the Yankees and what I think's hurting them now is we're going to see a lot of players who would rather make the same amount of money in another team because Homer Bailey can sign with the Reds for $105 million and make more money than he signed with the Yankees for $125.
Same with the Dodgers. If you were to go live in California, you would have that same situation. Places like Atlanta and Cincinnati, even Miami and places in Florida that have these more tax write-offs and not as high tax codes for people, they're actually going to be making more money in those situations.
So you can take less money and go to somewhere with a lot less headache.
Exactly.
So I think we'll see a lot of players go towards the Midwest and the South as opposed to New York and California.
I agree. But we got plenty more baseball to talk about, plenty more college sports coming up, a little Daytona 500 conversation. We'll get to that.
When we come back, I will talk about how Brian Price is going to change the game of baseball.
All right. We'll be back in about 4.5 minutes.